Good morning, Warzone kids. Beautiful day on the trail here in Vermont. Rosy-fingered dawn is fixing to wake up, but I beat her on the road this morning. Skies are blue-gray. It's over freezing, 33 degrees. Very nice. You take what you can get in January in Vermont. First year I lived up here, it was about 20 years ago. In January, there was a 17-day stretch where the high didn't get over 0 Fahrenheit. And I grew up in Oklahoma, and it would occasionally get down into single digits, and it was like a catastrophe when it got that cold in Vermont. And so first year I lived here, and it got down into negative 20. Negative 20s is about as cold as I've seen it. Negative 30 would be the absolute coldest I've seen it here, Fahrenheit. As it turns out, I think negative 30 is the same Fahrenheit and centigrade and Celsius. But nonetheless, it was cold enough for this Oklahoma boy. I'd never understood anything like that. It's like the air attacks you, and immediately the process of dying begins when you're outdoors. I drove to work. It took me about a half hour to get there. By the time I got there, my hands were so numb from my steering wheel, it was a real problem. I had to use my knees to steer. I couldn't tell if my hands were on the steering wheel or not. But it ain't like that this morning, Pilgrim. It's nice. And I was thinking about the Grail woods and, nights at a round table, and in my little metaphor of pilgrims on the trail to the western lands, a place of peace and wholeness where we Warzone kids learn and become who we are. Warzone kids is my term for just those of us that had a childhood that resembled more like a low-grade guerrilla war or a high-grade guerrilla war, where you were just under constant assault of some type of flavor of abuse, neglect, harm. And I stick with that word a lot. Harm caused you by your surroundings. I'm a child sex abuse survivor. But physical harm, emotional harm, psychological harm, societal harm. If you are just the wrong race, sex, gender, creed, human being, that can do a number on you. And the metaphor I use to think about the human psyche, our soul, the thing that we are, is a Jenga tower. In that game where there's one big block made out of a lot of small wooden blocks. And the course of a Warzone childhood is like playing that game of Jenga where you take blocks out and you put them on top. And every time you take a block off the Jenga tower, it gets a little bit more rickety and a little bit less stable. The center of gravity rises. And so as an adult, you have a Warzone psyche. A teetering, tottering Jenga tower like this guy. I live with borderline personality disorder. I'm a recovering addict, bulimic. I could use other words from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, whatever edition they're on now, number 5. Maybe they're on 6 now. I don't know. And that can be interesting and good, but also tangential, because the real problem is living my life right here and now today with my soul, my psyche that I have, that this Warzone kid has. That's what it's all about. That's what we got to do, is live our life now. There's a phrase from Zen: don't be an old woodcutter or a young hunter. An old woodcutter is someone going through life dragging the log of the past behind you, trying to whittle on that wood to fix it, trying to fix the past, trying to whittle it into the shape of a key that will unlock the happiness to your life. It ain't there, Pilgrim. And a young hunter is a person always looking off into the future, right? Walking through the woods, not looking at the ground in front of your feet, but hunting, looking for the happiness that lay just around the next curve, just around the next bend in the path. Is that your happiness right there, like a white stag disappearing into the woods? Yeah. Your life is right here and now, the ground under your feet, and your left foot and your right foot that are walking on it. That's where your life is, the here and now. Not the old woodcutter of the past or the young hunter looking for the future. And so I think about the Grail woods, when the knights of I don't even know where the round table fits into this story about the Grail woods. But the knights were in search of the Holy Grail, which to this pilgrim is a place of peace and happiness, learning and becoming what I am. And they found a patch of woods that was dark and where the trail petered out. And I'm calling that the Grail Forest. And this band of Warzone kids, we Warzone kids in the Grail Forest, we all have to find our own path out. And the Pilgrims all split up, and each of them went into the woods where it was darkest for them and where it was no path. And that is, in fact, the very definition of the Grail Woods. There's no path. You have to discover your path as you make it, and you make your path as you're discovering it. You don't have to see 10 yards ahead. You don't even have to see 10 feet ahead. All you can do is take one step at a time, and your legs ain't 10 feet long. Pick up your left foot, and it's going to come down somewhere, and that's your path. Pick up your right foot, it's got to come down somewhere, and that's your path. Look ahead of you and put your foot down. That's how you get through the Grail Forest. And I'm going to come back to how you get out of the Grail Forest at the end of this video. But we got to take a little detour into Gandalf and the Hobbits and Mirkwood Forest. Don't worry if you hate all that. The idea there is that there were some cursed woods, and Gandalf the wizard told the hobbits to stay on the path because everything else is haunted and enchanted. Stay on the path. Well, that's good advice. Stay on your path. The problem in the Grail Woods is there ain't no path up ahead of you. You are discovering your path as you make it, and you are making your path as you discover it. There ain't no path to stay on except the one that you're making one step at a time. So the path, the only path that you have to stay on when you're in the Grail Woods is the pathless path that you are making as you walk. That is your path. Your path is the pathless path. It is your path. It is not anyone else's path. And in the Grail Woods, if you see a path, stay off it. Stay off it because it's a trap. Any path you come across in the Grail Woods is a haunted, enchanted trap that's just going to take you back out to where you got in. It's going to kick you back out. You can't get through that way. It will kick you out. I'll tell you about some times. I'll tell you about a couple things come to my mind from this guy's life. I'm 51 years old now. And there's a time in my early 20s when I was in college. I was 3 semesters from graduating. And I had a brilliant plan to go off and do something else. I was going to transfer to a different college. I'll leave all that out. But I decided to do that and went back home for the summer. And all the rest of my life fell apart. I had a girlfriend I was with, broke up with her in a distressing way. And then I just let the whole thing fall apart. And I started getting high, and I followed a progression. I mean, I'm a Gen Xer. I did every drug I get my hands on in high school. But as a young adult in my 20s, living alone, I had 3 semesters from finishing college in Boston, went back to Oklahoma City, just absolutely fell apart. Started smoking pot, the happy drug, the enchanting drug, traded up to cocaine, the fun time social drug, traded up from cocaine to crack, which I never heard anyone call it then. They just called it rock. We just called it rock. And that is not a happy drug. It is a harsh taskmaster. And smoking rock will just go ahead and break you down to nothing in no time flat. And then I swapped over from that to meth and snorted it, put it in my coffee, smoked it, and then started slamming it in needles, biker crank. And the only reason I stopped with slamming it is I couldn't find any more intense way to get myself spun out faster. And I spent a while doing that, maybe a year or something like that. And while I was doing that, and that was as lost in the Grail Woods as this pilgrim has ever been. While I was doing that, I told myself a story the whole time. I was like Hunter S. Thompson. I read Hell's Angels when I was a kid. I read everything I get my hands on by Hunter S. Thompson. And I thought, yeah, this is my Hunter S. Thompson phase, my William S. Burroughs phase. Loved William S. Burroughs. The world's most successful heroin addict. A lot of my fellow addicts have gone to meet their end in jails, institutions, and death trying to be as successful as he was. The guy died in his 80s, petting his cats and slamming dope. But that wasn't what I was doing. What I was doing is burning my life down. That's all I was doing. I just had a good rationale for it. And that's all you need. I had a good story for what I was doing, wandering around in circles in the Grail woods, sabotaging my life. And I got out of that period. I dried out. I took what addicts would call the geographic cure. I just went somewhere else. In my case, I went out to the desert in western Colorado. Beautiful place. And there weren't no drugs we had there. There were a lot of devoutly, ruthlessly religious folks out there, and I couldn't get my hands on any dope. And I didn't want to at the time. But I didn't have any, what do you call, recovery. I didn't, at no point, did I ask myself what it was I had been doing all that time, wandering around in them dark woods, slamming dope, and coming within a hair's breadth any number of times that ended my own life in jails, institutions, or death. At no time did I ask myself that, and at no time did anyone around me prompt that kind of conversation. These were religious folks, and they knew the answer. You don't need 12 steps, you need one step, just Jesus. That's what they'd say. And they were people that had found their way, that was the path they were on. But the answer boiled down to me is like, well, you're bad. That's why you've done all this. And my childhood as a war zone kid, as a child sex abuse survivor, and survivor of all manner of chronic psychological and emotional harm. Hello, borderline personality disorder. You get that from you end up as an adult with borderline because you were a child that needed those characteristics to stay alive. Love means betrayal. People are good till they ain't. And it always starts with affection and approval. Then comes the betrayal. That was what my experience of love had been, and I had a psyche that had grown accustomed to that, and I took that psyche into adulthood with me. But after I dried out and moved away from where the dope was, I just crammed it all down. I probably gained 50 or 100 pounds in a few months because I took all those feelings and I didn't turn them into crank and slamming into my arm using shared needles. I turned it into peanut butter and Ovaltine and half and Oreos and slammed it into my guts. That's what I did, Pilgrim. And then I kind of, having dried out, I moved on with my life, which meant that I took all those bad feelings like genies and I crammed them all down into bottles. And I just put those bottles on the shelf in my mind and I left them there. And those genies clambered and screamed to get out for 20 years. And I just inflicted myself on the world around me for 20 years in a row. I just inflicted my utterly unconscious, unaware, desperate, hungry ghost of a psyche, looking to get fed like a bear, perpetually just devouring everything around me. I inflicted that on the rest of the world around me. I inflicted that on my now ex-wife, not surprising. I inflicted that on my kids. I inflicted that on my career. I inflicted that on the world around me for 20 years. I was on an enchanted path in the Grail forest. I wasn't on my path. And I never got out of them Grail woods. I would say I wandered in them dark woods for 20 solid years. Pilgrim. Now, some of you can relate. Some of you have been incarcerated for 20 years in a prison or in an institution, in a psych unit. Maybe in a psych unit in a prison. There's some dark woods for you. Some of you just been wandering around in the Grail woods of just basically not being able to hold it together. Or, what's almost worse, being able to hold it together on the outside. Get them degrees, get you some status, get you a job, Make sure you got a car and clothes and a body that the people looking at will think is a regular human. But inside, in your heart, you know you ain't human. You know you ain't nothing. Yeah? Sound familiar? I ain't the only one. Stay on the path. And don't set your foot on any path you see. That's the paradoxical advice for getting out of the Grail Woods. I'm going to make this part 1 because it's 15 minutes long and that's long enough. I'm going to come back here directly with part 2. When you're in the Grail Woods, the only path for you is your path. You got to discover it while you're making it, and you got to make it as you discover it. If you see another path in the Grail Woods, stay off it. It is someone else's path. It might have been a good path for them, but it ain't no kind of path for you, Pilgrim. Stay off it. Wait till you get your own. It's a beautiful day on the trail here. Rosy-fingered Dawn is getting mighty close to peeking her head up out of her covers over the side of the mountains. It's a beautiful morning, Pilgrim. We got a lot of miles to walk today, but we can walk them at 1 league per hour because a league is as far as you can walk in an hour. And we're both going to make it 1 league per hour today on the Western Lands, on the trail to the Western Lands, Pilgrim. Let's get our miles in. Let's walk them together. It's a beautiful day. Let's get a move on.